The esteemed halls of the Galactic Judiciary Complex weren't nearly as impressive as the brochures made them out to be. Sure, the ceiling soared 100 meters overhead in a transparent dome that displayed the swirling cosmic ballet of 3 nearby nebulae, but the benches were uncomfortable as hell, and someone had clearly skimped on the air filtration system. The complex smelled like a curious blend of bureaucracy, desperation, and whatever the Zencheri ambassador had for lunch, something with entirely too many tentacles and not nearly enough seasoning. "The defendant will rise," announced the bailiff, a gelatinous mass of translucent tissue, who didn't so much speak as vibrate meaningfully. The human prisoner stood, chains clinking with theatrical flair. One had to appreciate the Galactic Confederacy's commitment to ancient judicial aesthetics, even as they deliberated using quantum-entangled consciousness probes during interrogations. Nothing said fair trial like medieval restraints paired with mind-reading technology that occasionally gave subjects nosebleeds and spontaneous memories of events they never experienced. For crimes against the Galactic Confederacy, including but not limited to unauthorized access of restricted xenobiological data, infiltration of a Class 7 research facility, sabotage of containment protocols, and the Chief Justice, a 12-foot arthropodic creature with compound eyes that reflected the defendant in disorienting multiplicity, paused for dramatic effect. "The theft and consumption of the High Chancellor's ceremonial fruit platter. This court sentences you to death." The gallery erupted in a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators rendered as something approximating applause. The human didn't flinch, tall for her species at just under 6 feet, with dark hair cropped short against her skull, and eyes that reflected the cold calculation of someone who'd already assessed 14 different escape scenarios and found all of them wanting. "The sentence will be carried out," continued the Chief Justice, mandibles clicking in what might have been satisfaction, "by the traditional method of Krel'thak. You will be remanded to the maximum secondary detention facility on Moon K9, where you will await execution by our most ferocious native predator species." A curious murmur rippled through the assembly. The Krel'thak hadn't been used in over 3 centuries. It was considered both excessively theatrical and insufficiently efficient by modern standards. But humans had a way of making species break out the special occasions punishments. "Does the condemned wish to make a statement?" asked the bailiff, gelatinous form undulating, with what might have been either sympathy or digestive discomfort. The human looked around the room, taking in the menagerie of interstellar diplomats, officials, and sensation-seeking tourists who'd come to witness the trial of the infamous human who had managed to penetrate the most secure bioweapons research facility in the quadrant. "Your fruit platter," she said, voice clear and unwavering, "was mediocre at best. The phyllo pastry was soggy." The Chief Justice's exoskeleton flared in outrage, compound eyes flashing crimson. "Remove the prisoner immediately. Prepare transport to K9. As the guards, 4 hulking reptilians with more muscle than conversation skills, moved to escort her from the chamber, the human added, "And your security encryption was even worse than your catering." The processing center for Moon K9 made the judicial complex look like a luxury resort. Carved into the craggy surface of a tidally locked moon orbiting a gas giant, it had the architectural charm of a nightmare and the ambient temperature of a meat locker. The human shivered as they removed her standard-issue jumpsuit and replaced it with the thin grey garment that marked condemned prisoners. "Processing prisoner 7734, droned a mechanical voice as various scanners passed over her body. "Human female, age 32 standard cycles. Threat assessment, moderate to high. Special containment protocols activated." A bored-looking official with 4 arms and skin the color of a fading bruise pushed a data tablet toward her. Thumbprint here, retinal scan there. We need genetic confirmation of receipt of prisoner. Is there a comment card? The human asked. I'd like to note that your welcome procedure lacks a certain warmth. The official ignored her, already moving on to the next form. Medical examination waived due to imminent execution status. Dietary restriction? I'm allergic to death by alien predator. Does that count? One of the reptilian guards snorted, quickly disguising it as a cough when the official glanced up with 6 narrowed eyes. Humor, the official noted on the form. Typical human stress response, noted for behavioral profile. After processing came the transit to her cell, a long journey down corridors that seemed designed by someone with an unhealthy obsession with concrete and poor understanding of ergonomics. The facility sprawled in a labyrinthine complex that burrowed deep into the moon's crust. Occasionally they passed other cells, most empty, some containing shapes that lurked in shadows or pressed against force field barriers with appendages that defied conventional anatomy. Not much of a social scene, the human observed. Do you at least have game night, book club, ritualistic chanting to elder gods from beyond the veil of space? Her escort, down to just 2 guards now, remained stoically silent. Tough crowd, she muttered. They arrived at her cell. Larger than expected, roughly 5 meters square with a sleeping platform, sanitation corner discreetly hidden behind a partition, and a small table bolted to the floor. The walls were smooth, seamless metal, likely some hyper-alloy that would resist any attempt at damage or escape. A force field hummed across the entrance, crackling with enough energy to reduce an escape attempt to atoms. Home, sweet home, she said, surveying the space that would be her last residence in this universe. I was hoping for something with a view. Maybe a nice nebula. Gas giant? No? Just solid walls, then. Very original. The taller guard finally spoke, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. You won't be here long enough to redecorate. That's what all my landlords say, she replied, stepping into the cell as the force field momentarily deactivated. And yet I always manage to leave my mark. The force field snapped back into place with an electrical sizzle. The execution is scheduled for 7 standard cycles, the second guard informed her. You will be permitted 3 meals per cycle and limited sanitation privileges. What about visitors, family, legal representatives, desperate for a last-minute dramatic appeal? You have been designated persona non grata by 17 systems. Your government has disavowed knowledge of your actions. There will be no visitors. The human's expression flickered for just a moment, a brief crack in the facade of sardonic detachment. The beast will be your guard during your remaining time. The first guard added, with what might have been a reptilian smile. A fitting prelude to your execution, don't you think? A beast? As my guard? She raised an eyebrow. Couldn't afford proper security staff? Budget cuts hitting the execution department pretty hard these days? The guards exchanged glances that translated across species barriers as smug satisfaction. The Krel'thak is traditional, said the second guard. The predator studies its prey before the hunt. It's considered more spiritually fulfilling for all parties. How thoughtful, the human said dryly. And here I thought you just wanted me dead. Oh no, replied the first guard, already turning to leave. We want you properly eliminated. There's a difference. The beast will arrive after the facility enters night cycle. Sleep well, human. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor, leaving her alone with the soft hum of the force field and the distant mechanical sounds of the facility's life support systems. The human waited until the sounds faded completely before methodically examining every centimeter of her cell. She ran her fingers along seams in the metal, tested the strength of the furniture, and checked the sanitation area for anything useful. Finding nothing immediately promising, she sat cross-legged on the sleeping platform and closed her eyes. Contrary to what the guards might have expected, she wasn't planning an escape. Not yet. First, she needed information. To understand the facility's routines, to learn its weaknesses, and, perhaps most importantly, to meet this beast that would supposedly both guard and eventually execute her. After all, she hadn't infiltrated the most secure bioweapons facility in the quadrant and stolen its data by rushing in without a plan. Patient observation had always been her greatest strength. That, and an uncanny ability to make friends in the most unlikely places. The facility's lighting dimmed gradually, simulating a natural day-night cycle that had nothing to do with the actual astronomical reality of the tidally locked moon. As darkness settled, the human lay on her back, eyes open, waiting. The beast was coming. And despite everything, the trial, the sentence, the seemingly inescapable situation, she smiled in the darkness. Let them think they had won. Let them believe she was just another doomed prisoner. The galaxy would learn, as others had before, that underestimating humans was always a costly mistake. She was sentenced to death by beast. Now the apex predator guards her cell. Part 2. Meeting the beast. The Moon Canine Detention Facility awakened with all the subtlety of a quantum core breach. Lights flickering to harsh brightness, intercom systems squawking announcements in 17 different languages, and the distant clanging of food preparation that promised another day of nutritionally complete but culinarily bankrupt meals. 3 cells down from the human's quarters, a prisoner with translucent skin and visible organs began a morning ritual that involved high-pitched keening and rhythmic slapping against the force field. 5 cells in the opposite direction, something with too many limbs and not enough eyes, performed elaborate shadow puppetry on its cell wall, telling stories no one else could understand. The human sat cross-legged on her sleeping platform, watching the corridor through the shimmering force field barrier. She hadn't slept. The beast never appeared during the night cycle, which was either an administrative oversight or, more likely, psychological warfare. "Breakfast service," announced a hovering drone, depositing a tray through a momentary fluctuation in the force field. The meal consisted of a grey protein cube, a cup of liquid that purported to be water but had the vague scent of industrial solvent, and something that resembled fruit, if fruit were designed by committee and produced in a factory that normally manufactured synthetic carpeting. 5 stars, the human muttered, picking up the protein cube and giving it an experimental sniff. Compliments to the chef. As she ate, the food tasted better than it looked, which wasn't saying much. She observed the facility's morning routine. Guards changed shifts with military precision. Maintenance drones zipped through the corridors, scanning for structural issues or contraband. Medical personnel in sterile white coveralls conducted brief wellness checks at certain cells, pointedly skipping hers. Why waste resources on someone scheduled to die? Midway through her meager breakfast, the ambient noise of the facility changed. The normal hum of conversation among guards ceased. Prisoners who had been vocalizing fell silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to quiet, as if the facility itself were holding its breath. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, not the familiar cadence of the reptilian guards or the precise click of administrative staff, but something else, something deliberate and powerful. The human set down her protein cube and straightened her posture, eyes fixed on the corridor. First came 2 security officers she hadn't seen before, wearing reinforced armor and carrying stun batons, capable of dropping a charging Taurian bull elephant. Their expressions suggested they'd rather be anywhere else. Behind them walked a standard facility administrator, clutching a data tablet so tightly her knuckles had turned pale lavender. And then came the beast. The creature stood over 7 feet tall, moving with the fluid grace of an apex predator. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color slightly with each movement, creating a disorienting visual effect, somewhere between camouflage and hypnosis. A ridge of what appeared to be metallic spines ran from the crown of its elongated head down its powerful back. Its limbs were long and corded with muscle beneath the scales, ending in hands, yes, hands, not paws or claws, with 7 digits tipped with retractable talons that gleamed like polished obsidian. But it was the eyes that captured the human's attention. Large, forward-facing, with vertical pupils set in amber irises. Predator's eyes. Hunter's eyes. Intelligence burned in those eyes. Not just animal cunning, but something deeper, more complex. Something almost familiar. "Prisoner 7734, said the administrator, voice quavering slightly. "This is your assigned guard. The Krel'thak will observe you until execution." The beast made a sound, a low, rumbling vocalization that vibrated at a frequency the human could feel in her chest. The universal translation implant all prisoners received upon processing struggled momentarily before rendering. "I smell fear and protein cube. One of these smells is more appetizing than the other." The administrator's complexion shifted several shades paler. "The force field is rated for Class 7 containment. It will prevent any premature interaction. There will be no direct contact until the execution ceremony." "How disappointing," said the human, rising to her feet. "And here I was hoping for a meet and greet. Perhaps a get-to-know-you session before the whole death thing." The beast tilted its head, studying her with those unsettling eyes. "The human makes jokes in the face of death. Curious defense mechanism." "We're full of surprises," she replied, moving closer to the force field, though careful not to touch it. "It helps distract from our squishy exteriors and general lack of natural weaponry." The administrator looked horrified at this exchange. "Communication with the Krel'thak is not advised. It is here to guard and eventually, well, you understand." "Eat me?" supplied the human helpfully. "Turn me into an exotic snack? Make me tomorrow's protein cube for the other prisoners?" The beast made a sound that might have been a laugh, a raspy, growling exhalation. "Your species uses humor to mask fear. I can still smell it beneath the words." "That's probably just the protein cube." The human held up the remains of her breakfast. "Want some? Seems only fair to sample the merchandise before the main event." "Enough!" snapped the administrator. "The Krel'thak will remain stationed outside your cell. Guards will continue regular patrols. Any attempt to interfere with the Krel'thak will result in immediate disciplinary action." "Worse than being eaten?" asked the human innocently. The administrator didn't dignify this with a response, instead turning to the beast. "You understand your duties?" The creature's scales rippled in what might have been amusement or annoyance. "Guard, watch, hunt when the time comes. Simple enough even for your species to comprehend." With visible discomfort, the administrator and guards retreated, leaving the human and the beast regarding each other through the force field. For several long moments neither spoke. The beast settled into a coiled position opposite her cell, its body arranged in a way that appeared relaxed, but could transition to explosive movement in an instant. The human returned to her sleeping platform, sitting once more with her back against the wall, watching. "You're not what I expected," she finally said. "Few ever see my kind," replied the beast. "Fewer survive to describe us." "I meant as a prison guard. Seems like a waste of an apex predator. Don't you have better things to do? Forests to stalk? Galaxies to conquer? Reality cooking shows to host?" The beast's scales shifted to a deeper hue. "My presence here is not by choice. That makes 2 of us." The human gestured around her cell. "Though I suspect your accommodations are better." Your assumption is incorrect. This gave the human pause. She studied the creature more carefully, noting details she'd missed initially. There was a metallic collar around its massive neck, barely visible beneath the scales and spines. One of its 7-fingered hands bore what appeared to be scarring or burn marks. "You're a prisoner too," she said. Not a question, but a realization. "Our being served something," the beast replied cryptically. "Some chains are visible, others are not." The rest of the day established a strange rhythm. The beast remained stationed outside her cell, sometimes standing, sometimes in that coiled resting position that still suggested imminent violence. Guards passed by on their rounds, giving the creature a wide berth. Meal drones delivered the humans' lunch and dinner through the force field. Throughout it all, human and beast observed each other with mutual curiosity. Other prisoners gawked when they were moved through the corridor for exercise periods or medical treatments. Some made signs with their appendages that the translation implant identified as warding against evil or death. Others called taunts or placed bets on how quickly the human would die when the time came. "Your fellow prisoners lack imagination," commented the beast, after a particularly graphic suggestion involving dismemberment. "Death is rarely as creative as the living imagine it to be. Sounds like you've had experience." "I have ended 1,732 sentient lives," stated the beast matter-of-factly. Each believed they understood death before it came. None did. "Will I be 1,733? The beast's amber eyes fixed on her. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you are as interesting as you appear to be." The facility's night cycle began, lights dimming gradually until only the emergency illumination remained, casting everything in a muted blue glow. The beast's scales adapted, darkening to absorb what little light remained, making it nearly invisible except for those glowing eyes. The human didn't lie down to sleep. Instead, she remained sitting, watching the predator that watched her. "Do your kind sleep?" she asked. "We enter restorative states," the beast answered, "but we remain aware of our surroundings, always alert to threat or opportunity." "Sounds exhausting," says the creature who hasn't slept since arriving. The human smiled slightly. "Touche." As the night deepened and the facility quieted, a different sort of tension developed in the corridor. A warning klaxon sounded briefly several sections away, then fell silent. The beast's head turned, listening to something beyond human hearing. "Trouble in paradise?" asked the human. The beast didn't respond immediately, its scales rippling in patterns that suggested calculation or concern. Finally, it turned back to her. "There has been an incident in the Western Quadrant. Guards are responding." "What kind of incident?" "The kind that ends in death." Before the human could probe further, a group of prisoners rounded the corner at the far end of the corridor, not under guard escort, but moving freely and with purpose. 5 of them, diverse species, but united in their deliberate advance. One manipulated a device that caused the force fields they passed to temporarily deactivate. "Well," said the human, rising to her feet, "this just got interesting." The beast moved with startling speed, positioning itself directly in front of her cell, facing the approaching prisoners. "They are not here to rescue you," it said, voice lowered. "They are here to eliminate any witnesses to their escape. And you're protecting me?" The human couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "I am fulfilling my duty to guard you," the beast replied, its spines extending to their full, intimidating length. "Your death belongs to me, not to them." The escaped prisoners slowed as they registered the presence of the Krel'thak. The one leading the group, a bulky entity with silicon-based physiology, raised a crude weapon fashioned from what appeared to be plumbing components. "Stand aside, Hunter," it grated in poorly translated Common. "Our quarrel is not with you. The human is under my protection," stated the beast, its voice carrying a harmonic that made the translation implant briefly malfunction. "Find another path." The silicon being conferred briefly with its companions, a rapid exchange of clicks and crystalline sounds. Then it raised its makeshift weapon again. "We cannot leave witnesses. The human dies. You may die too, or stand aside. Choose." The beast's response was not in words. It moved like liquid death, crossing the space between itself and the escapees before the human's eyes could fully track the motion. The silicon being discharged its weapon, some sort of electrical pulse that the beast simply absorbed into its scales without breaking stride. Then the beast was among them, a whirlwind of talons and teeth and precision violence. The human watched, transfixed, as the creature that was meant to end her life instead defended it with terrifying efficiency. There was an artistry to the brutality, a calculated conservation of energy that spoke of evolutionary perfection. In under 30 seconds, 4 of the escaped prisoners lay unconscious or incapacitated on the corridor floor. The 5th, a spindly creature with remarkable speed, managed to reach the control panel for her cell before the beast caught it, seizing it by what passed for a throat and lifting it off the ground. "I told you," said the beast, voice deadly quiet. "The human is mine." With a casual flick of its wrist, it rendered the final escapee unconscious and let the body crumple to the floor. Alarm klaxons finally blared throughout the facility. The sound of running guards echoed from multiple directions, but in that moment, there was just the human and the beast, separated by a force field, united by the strange intimacy of shared violence. "Thank you," said the human, finding no sarcasm or wit appropriate for the moment. The beast's amber eyes met hers. "Do not thank me yet, human. I have only postponed your death, not prevented it." But something had changed between them, some understanding that transcended species and circumstances. The beast had made a choice that went beyond duty, and as the guards arrived to secure the unconscious escapees, the human realized that her chances of survival had just become marginally less impossible, which in her experience was often enough. The aftermath of the escape attempt brought heightened security, frantic administrators, and a peculiar shift in the atmosphere between predator and prey. The human sat cross-legged on her sleeping platform, watching as the beast methodically carved patterns into the floor with one talon, not random destruction, but what appeared to be mathematical equations. "Interesting hobby for an apex predator," she observed. The beast's scales rippled in what she'd come to recognize as amusement. "Did you expect me to sharpen my claws and practice roaring?" "Something like that. Maybe a little preening and territorial marking." The beast tapped a complex symbol it had etched. "This represents the quantum entanglement principle that allows interstellar communication. Your species has barely scratched its surface. You're not just muscle and teeth, are you?" The human leaned forward. "You're a scholar. And you're not just a thief and saboteur. I've been watching your eyes track the guard rotations, counting seconds between surveillance sweeps. Their gazes locked in mutual reassessment. We have a saying," the human offered, "don't judge a book by its cover." "We have a similar concept," replied the beast. "The quietest predator brings down the largest prey." A facility alarm blared briefly, indicating a sector lockdown. The beast tilted its head, listening. "More escapees?" asked the human. "No. Something else. Something political." Hours later, the administrator returned, flanked by different guards and looking distinctly uncomfortable. "There have been developments," she announced, glancing nervously between human and beast. "The Galactic Security Council has reviewed footage of yesterday's incident. They're impressed by the cooperation displayed between you two. We're thinking of starting a band, deadpanned the human. The beast made that rasping sound that might have been laughter. I play no instruments, but I can keep rhythm with bone percussion. The administrator's complexion paled further. This is precisely the unexpected dynamic that has caught the council's attention. They've proposed an alternative arrangement? I'm still getting eaten, but with dinner and dancing first, suggested the human. The execution has been postponed. The administrator practically choked on the word. Instead, you two will be given a probationary mission. The council believes your unique combination of skills could be useful for a certain diplomatic situation. The beast's spines extended slightly. Explain. A contested border outpost, multiple species with competing claims, delicate negotiations requiring both human adaptability and, hey, she gestured vaguely at the beast, intimidation capabilities. The human and beast exchanged glances. And if we succeed, asked the human. Commutation to life imprisonment, said the administrator, for both of you. And if we fail, rumbled the beast. Then the original sentence stands. The administrator attempted a smile that looked more like a grimace. The galaxy wins either way. After she departed, silence hung between prisoner and guard. Did that just happen? The human finally asked. Politics, stated the beast dismissively, always changing like desert sands. We could escape during transit, suggested the human. Go our separate ways? The beast studied her with those intelligent amber eyes. You would trust me not to complete my original assignment? To let you live? The human shrugged. You protected me once already. Perhaps I was simply saving you for myself. Perhaps, she smiled. Or perhaps we're both more than what they think we are. The beast's scales shifted through complex patterns before settling on a deep, resonant blue. Perhaps indeed. The diplomatic outpost of Nexus 7 orbited a neutral star, a precarious balance of technology versus nature that mirrored the political tensions within. Representatives from 17 species occupied the station's chambers, each defending territorial claims with increasing hostility. Remind me why we're not escaping, whispered the human as they were escorted through security checkpoints, their restraints conspicuously lightweight, more symbolic than functional. Curious to see how this plays out, replied the beast, scales shifting to match the metallic tones of the station. Besides, where would you go that I couldn't follow? Is that a threat or a promise? The beast's amber eyes gleamed. Does it matter? Their escort, a nervous bureaucrat with too many appendages and not enough patience, ushered them into a grand chamber, where delegates glared at each other across a circular table. The specialists have arrived, announced the bureaucrat, the universal translator struggling to convey both authority and apology simultaneously. A human criminal and a leashed predator, scoffed a delegate with crystalline features. This is the Confederation's solution. The human smiled sweetly. Actually, I'm the predator. Common misconception. 17 species fell silent, reassessing the strange pair. The border dispute, began the beast, voice resonating through the chamber, is not about territory, it's about fear. It moved with fluid grace around the table, scales rippling hypnotically. Each species fears extinction at the hands of the others. So you claim space as buffer zones against imagined aggression. Easy for you to say, hissed a delegate wreathed in atmospheric containment fields. Your kind hunts for sport, and yours strip mines inhabited worlds, countered the human, casually hacking into the chamber's display system with a device she'd assembled from components borrowed during transit. Let's be honest about who the real predators are. Data streamed across the view screens. Resource extraction figures, military deployments, extinction events. We've studied your conflict, continued the human, and frankly, you're all terrible at it. Inefficient aggression, wasteful defense systems. What she means, translated the beast, is that cooperation would yield better results than competition. Why should we listen to condemned criminals? Demanded another delegate. The beast extended its talons, examining them casually. Because we understand survival better than anyone in this room. What followed was the strangest negotiation in Confederation history. A diplomatic dance choreographed by those with nothing to lose. The human's tactical insights complemented the beast's intimidation factor. Within hours, territorial lines were redrawn, resource-sharing agreements drafted. Afterwards, as they awaited transport back to K9, the human studied her unlikely partner. You could have killed me a dozen times today. The beast's scales shifted to a contemplative blue. As could you. That projectile weapon you assembled from the delegate's ceremonial staff was quite impressive. They shared a moment of unexpected understanding. So what happens now? Asked the human. Back to our cells? The Galactic Council is reassessing your sentence, interrupted the administrator, appearing with remarkable timing and visible discomfort. Both your sentences, actually. Let me guess, drawled the human. You've found another impossible mission that needs expendable assets. Several, actually. The administrator couldn't quite meet their eyes. It seems you work well together. The beast made that rasping laugh. From execution to employment, bureaucracy is truly the greatest predator of all. Later, in their new shared quarters, still secured but vastly improved, the human found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in years. You realize what's happened? She asked the beast. They're more afraid of us working together than they were of us separately. As they should be, rumbled the beast, amber eyes gleaming with something like friendship. As they absolutely should be.